Okay. Yeah. Not right now. Let me just, not going to take that long. Okay, so percent. Remember that proportions, the thing that we just did, is an equation which is a fraction equals a fraction, right? Something like this, you would say, which we didn't so far, you would say 1 is to 2 as 4 is to 8, right? That's how you look at it. 1 is to 2 as 4 is to 8. In this one, because we got a variable involved, it's 2 is to 3 as what number is to 12, and then we would solve for that number, right? And how would we solve it? We would cross multiply, right? 3x equals 24, x equals 8. So 2 is to 3 as 8 is to 12, which is good. Right? When we do percents, the fraction that we're comparing to on the right-hand side is always 100. Right? The percent describes how many per 100. 4 is to 5 as what number is to 100, right? So, not 8. Where's the word percent come from? Yeah, percent. How many is taken Spanish? Jalen. What do we care about that now? Okay, we're doing math. We're doing math. It's not our issue now, okay? We'll deal with it later. Okay. We're not doing it. Okay, do not interrupt. The 4 is to 5 is x is to 100. When you find that number, that is the percent, right? That is the percent that 4 is of 5. Okay, let's do it. What is the math? 4 times 100 is 400 equals 5x. Divide by 5. X equals 80. Okay, Jalen. Okay, be quiet. Okay, percent. Pay attention to what we're doing up here. Okay, this is the way this is the parts of that proportion which gives us the percent. You know, you call this part is the part, is to the base, as the percent is to 100. You guys might want to move seats or something, because I guarantee you, you're getting detentions. Okay? I'm here every day after school. So just make a deal. Next week, Monday through Friday, you're here. Yes. Okay. Now, there's going to be a few different kinds of problems that we have to answer with percents. If it says, what percent of 80 is 18, right, then you would say, the 18 goes here, the 80 goes here. What percent means you're asking the question about that, right? We've got the part and we've got the base. We don't know the percent, and that is always 100, right? That's how you set up a problem like that. Okay, now solve for the x. Again, how are you going to solve for the x? Cross multiply, right? This will be 18 times 100, 1800 equals 80. 8, oops, undo, equals 80x. And then what? Divide by 80. Okay, so x equals. Now, we should simplify that. What's the first level of simplifying you can do? Since they both end in zeros. Since they both end in zeros, you can lop off the last zero. That's just like saying divide both top and bottom by 10. All right, now we got 180 over 8. And that should be a little easier to simplify. Right? At the very least, you could divide out an even number, right? 2. So that is 90 over 4. Could you go one more step? Right? You could say 45 over 2. Now, because we're doing percent, we probably should turn that into a mixed number. What is 45 over 2? 22.5, right? So that is 22.5. Now, the 22.5 is a percent, and there's a symbol for that. What is the symbol? Looks something like that. So remember the difference between that is a percent. That is the number per 100. If you have to do calculations with percents, then you would be using 0.225, right? And that's dividing the 22.5 by 100. So sometimes when we use percents in calculations, we're going to use that. When we're asked a question about a percent, you say that. So you should have some paper out. Try to do the same thing with that. Right? This is where you try, and I give you credit for it at the end of the block. And if you don't, then you don't get credit for it, and it counts against you. Here, here, three. Okay, what did we get? Anybody? What did you say? 75%? Anybody else get an answer? Sean? Okay, well, again, when it says, remember, we're filling in this form. Right? We've got the part is to the base as the percent is to 100. So where does the 30 go and where does the 40 go? Usually when it says what percent of 40, that means that's the base. That's the clue, is kind of the of word in front of there. That makes that the base. And the 30 then must be the part. Right? So we're going to go 30 right there. So here's the equation. 30 is to 40 as what is to 100? That's what you solve. That's what DeAndre solved and got it. Right. Okay, so the first kind of question is you don't know what the percent is. They've given you the part, they've given you the base. You find the percent. Okay? The next kind of question will be, they've actually given us the percent and they've given us the base. How do you know it's the base? Again, usually because of the of word, right? So it's going to be, that's the base. So the thing that we don't know is the part, right? X over 320 equals 75 over 100. Solve. Again, how are you going to solve it? Cross multiply. So 100x equals, and now we're going to have to do 75 times 320. So again, that would become like the multiplication problems that we've been practicing. Right? 5 times 0, 5 times 2, 5 times 3 is 15, 16. 7 times 0, 7 times 2 is 14. 7 times 3 is 21, 22. So 0, 0, 10, 4, 2. 240,000. Is that right? No, 24,000. One too many zeros. So 100x equals 2400. Divide by 100. What do you get? Divide by 100. Divide by 100, right? Just lop off 2 zeros from the end. X equals 240. So it would say that 240 is to 320 as 75 is to 100. And just looking at the kind of relative sizes of the numbers, it looks pretty good, right? We would expect 75 is less than 100, 240 is less than 320, but closer to it than half. Okay, so you try this one. Again, another one where you're trying to find the part. What is 30% of 40? Yeah, I'm getting your stuff now. Didn't I just print that out for you? Oh. What'd you get? You got 20, 12, 30% of 40. What's that? Sure. Okay. So how many got 12? Right? You set it up like, what did your proportion look like? Oops. Okay. X over 40 is 30 over 100. So 100 x equals 30 times 40, which is 1200. X equals 1200 divided by 100. You know, you're doing these calculations with percents, you're always dividing by 100. So, you know, understanding how you can move the decimal place over 2 or knock off some zeros. 12. So far, we have not known the part, we've not known the percent, which is the other one we got to know, the base. Okay, 50 is 25% of what number? Again, the word of there is the clue that you're looking for the base. That's what you don't know. Okay. So when the part is to the base as the percent is to 100, right? The of what number, that's telling you that's the base. And the base, since you don't know it, that's x. So 50 is to x as 25 is to 100. Solve for x. Right, it'd be 25x equals 50 times 100, which is what? 5,000. 5,000? Sounds right. Divide by 25. Divide by 25. What is 5,000 divided by 25? 200. So we would say 50 is to 200 as 25 is to 100. 50 is 25% of 200. It's 1/4. Okay, here's your next. So you try to find 25 is 50% of what number? Remember, because of the word of here, we know that this is talking about the base. The base equals x. It's the thing we don't know. You trying this, Sarah? Going to be checking on this. I don't see every one we've done. You're not getting credit. Who's got an answer? Kevin's got an answer. What'd you say? Yes? No. You gave a percent. We know the percent. Yes? That is it. I mean, I kind of use numbers that are easy to manipulate since we're not using a calculator. 500? Incorrect. How are we doing? We said 25 is to what as 50 is to 100. So 50x equals that divided by 50. 2,500 divided by 50. You're right. When you get that, you're done. So 25 is to x as 50 is to 100. Cross multiply. 2,500 equals 50x. Right? X equals 2,500 divided by 50, which is what? 50. It's 50. So 25 is to 50, as 50 is to 100. And then the last couple, I mean, the truth is we don't do a lot of word problems in here, but if there's nothing else you get out of any of this, is just some more familiarity with percents. I guarantee you, whether you use math in your life or not, you're going to be affected by percents. Bank accounts, interest on loans like car loans or mortgages or whatever. Percents come up all the time, and you don't want to be the one that says, I don't get them, because there's not much other to get than this, right? Because, I mean, if you know this, you could be in pretty good shape when you start talking about the interest rate on a car loan you're going to get or something like that. So let's say on this one, the freshman class at Kickitan, I'm just making this up, is 500. If the graduation rate is 80%, how many students will graduate? Right? How can I set that up as a proportion? X over 500 equals 80 over 100. Okay. Which, you know, you could solve that like a proportion. 100x equals 8 times 500, was that 400,000? And then divide. What are we going to get? 400 is going to be our answer. I mean, another thing you could think of, and honestly, this is the way that this is done, is if you multiply both sides times 500, you're going to get x equals 80 over 100 times 500. X equals 0.8 times 500. I mean, normally, if you're asked find 80% of a number, you multiply by the decimal percent. But if you set it up in a proportion like this, that'll all take care of itself, right? Just solve the proportion. But generally, this 80 over 100, that is 0.8. That's the decimal percent. So this one is 100x equals, let's see, 8 times 500 would be 4,000, so it's 40,000. And divide by 100, x equals 400. So we would expect 400. Now, is that about, what do you think about graduation rates? Does that seem like it's a ballpark figure? Have you ever heard graduation rates thrown around? Generally, 80% is probably pretty close. I mean, the graduation rate's one of those things that is overseen a lot, and it has a lot of importance. So they actually kind of fudge the numbers a lot. So a couple of years ago, we might have been 70%, and they figured a new way of counting, and now all of a sudden we're 85%. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Depends if you're counting in 4 years, 5 years. Does it count GEDs? You know, all kinds of things can change that percent. But 80% is not far off. Generally, about 1 in 5 who start high school do not finish. Okay, so this is kind of like a you try here. All right, if you buy a car with a list price of $20,000 and it's discounted 25%, then how much are you going to pay for it? How could you figure out how much you pay for it if it's discounted 25%? What's that? Okay. You could multiply 20,000 times 0.25. That would give you the amount of the discount. How would you figure out how much you paid? And then you could subtract. I mean, the way I usually think of it is like this. If it's being discounted 25%, what percent are you paying? 75%, right? So we're going to say X is to 20,000 as 75 is to 100. And then solve that like a proportion. Right? That'll be 100x equals, and it must be 1500000. Divide by 100. X equals 15,000. So the key thing is that when you get asked a question which is talking about a discount, you kind of have to do that either like Alyssa said, okay, calculate the amount of the discount and subtract, or figure out what percent you're paying and then set up a proportion and solve. Now, what if after you've got your 15,000, another place, real world, where interest comes into play or percent comes into play, you got to pay a sales tax? I mean, you thought you're getting it for 15,000, but you didn't count on the fact that there's going to be a sales tax. How much is going to be the total cost, or how could we calculate the total cost if we're going to pay 15,000 plus a 5% sales cost tax? How could we find 5% of 15,000? The same way we've been doing it, right? X is to 15,000 as 5 is to 100. Solve. Okay, that'll be 100x. And what is 5 times 15,000? The 5 times 15 is 75. Put 3 zeros on the end. Divide by 100. X equals, cancel, 75. Is that right? No, it's 750. 750. Now, is 5% real, close to the sales tax that we pay in the state? It's like 5.2%, but because we're not using calculators, I just made it even 5. It is about what you pay. If you go buy something, even a big thing like that, you're going to pay a sales tax. That's the Virginia sales tax, and I don't know whether the Hampton's got a tax that you pay also, but you might. Okay. So that's the homework.